Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Wednesday Wisdom. My name is JB Hilliard and these are short video snippets designed to answer questions you may have about estate planning, probate, or maybe there are other legal concerns that may be impacting your household. And for this week, we are on the probate side of things, and I actually this just happened yesterday, so I thought this was good timing for Wednesday wisdom fodder. But I just received notice that we finally have a final order of discharge for a probate case I've been working on. And this particular case has lasted 6.5 years. Now, before you assume that means the estate was a complete mess, it actually wasn't. The decedent did have a will. And the person she nominated to be in charge, to be her personal representative, was very well organized and stayed on top of things the whole time. So it wasn't about that, but there were some other lessons learned, I'll say. And the bottom line, and I'll probably circle back around to this, that estate planning is not just about deciding who gets your stuff. It's about making it easier for the people you leave behind to actually carry out your wishes. So let me just share with you a couple or a few lessons learned from this specific case. Number one is know how your property is titled. Now, this comes into play more so with real estate, but any other type of titling asset would fall under this category. And basically what I see, and not just in this case, but in a lot of matters that come across my desk, what I see is the way an asset is actually titled versus what that property owner or how that property owner thinks that asset is titled can be a huge mismatch. And that can throw a big wrench into how that asset is ultimately passed on. So you got to know, for instance, how if your house is jointly owned with you and your spouse, jointly own this house. Most married couples or most partners think that because we say it's jointly owned, that if you die before me, then the house automatically becomes mine. It depends on the specific wording, at least here in Georgia, it depends on the specific wording on that actual transfer deed. I've talked about this in previous videos, so I won't get into that right now, but know how your property is titled. Another lesson to be learned is know how and keep your beneficiary information current. Not only the beneficiaries you have listed in your will, but also that beneficiary or those beneficiaries for other non-probate accounts and assets. And I've talked about this more recently. In fact, we had a homework assignment in a few videos back about checking your beneficiary designations. And not only keeping that information current, but also anticipating what happens if that primary beneficiary dies before you or before the distribution of that particular asset. So one of the things I require of my clients is not only give me who your person is, but who's the successor beneficiary, who's the one after that. If that person is no longer, who's next? And sometimes I even ask for a third listing, a third level. So you got to make sure you're planning ahead as much as you can. Another lesson learned is making sure important documents and information can actually be located, particularly if you're a single person putting together your estate plan, or at least gathering all of your important paperwork, all of your important documentation like your life insurance policy, the car title, the lender information for your house if you're paying on a mortgage. Where's all this stuff kept? And last but certainly not least, kind of tied into where the information is who needs to be looking at this information. So choosing the right person to handle the estate administration process. I can't emphasize enough how important that role is. And you need to not just say, I want my oldest child to do it, or my brother or my sister or my best friend. This person needs to have a certain level of skill, not necessarily knowing the ins and outs of the probate process, but having an understanding of financials, having the ability to communicate with other family members, having the ability to communicate with potential creditors or other claimants against the estate, knowing when is too much for me, so let me hire a professional that specializes in this area, like tax preparation or legal counsel. So you have to make sure you're choosing the right person, as well as that backup successor, executor, personal representative, and maybe even a third backup or another backup. So bottom line is you can't really control everything that happens after you die. There's no, we put together this tight, wonderful, all-encompassing estate plan, but there's no 100% guarantee that everything is going to go off without a hitch. There's just no way to know that. But good estate planning can eliminate several or many of the issues that make an estate harder and therefore more than likely more expensive to administer. So just remember that your estate plan isn't just for you. It's also a roadmap for the people who will have to handle things after you're gone. So with that said, as always, I thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.